We've locked Amir Oren in studio because I cannot enjoy the presence of Ami Kaufman just by myself.
Wow.
I know.
Jeez.
But it was a nice, smooth transition.
You want to share your joy.
I wanted to. That said, Ami Kaufman here with the news we've missed while scanning the headlines.
We are going to start with Paris, but not the attacks. Well, kind of about the attacks. The COP21 Climate Summit is happening in the next few days, and world leaders are gathering. It's probably one of the most important climate summits in recent years that we've had. But a lot of environmental activists are worried that the Paris attacks are going to put now environmental issues kind of on the back burner. We have a report about it. Let's check it out.
Let's take a look.
It is now a fact. The world is getting warmer and warmer by the day. According to the World Meteorological Organization, 2015 is likely to become the warmest on record and to reach the symbolic and significant milestone of 1 degree Celsius higher than the pre-industrial era. Scientists mention several reasons for this alarming information, the first of which will be the increase in greenhouse gas emissions.
CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, and a few others. We have broken once again absolute records of that.
World leaders are preparing for the opening of COP21 in Paris next week, the 21st yearly session of the Conference of the Parties to the 1992 UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. The goal of this convention is to achieve an international agreement on climate change with the aim of keeping global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. In 1997, the Kyoto Protocol was signed and became the first treaty between nations aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But according to a report of the Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency, while some countries managed to meet or exceed their goals, others like the US and China have produced more than enough extra greenhouse gas to erase all the reductions of other countries during the Kyoto period. Recent studies show that climate change threats are much more immediate and crucial than previously thought. The implications may be felt in other fields like economy, welfare, and even terrorism. A recent study published in PNAS journal says there is evidence that the 2007-2010 drought in Syria contributed to the civil war there. This perhaps is why world leaders take this threat much more seriously than before.
Climate change, and especially rising seas, is a threat to our homeland security, our economic infrastructure, the safety and health of the American people.
It is clear to all that climate change is one of the top threats in the world today, and yet too little has been done to tackle the issue. Last September, EU countries agreed on a plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40%. The US also announced an equivalent plan called the Clean Power Plan, which was highly criticized by opposition members who said it would bring an unwelcome increase in electricity prices. Experts also said it is difficult to enforce the plans, and on top of this, some scientists believe the ocean's increasing ability to absorb heat could push temperatures up even if carbon dioxide emissions were shut off. And the future indeed doesn't seem so bright.
Next year is likely to be warm again.
According to a latest study published at the Nature Climate Change Journal, future temperature in Southwest Asia are projected to exceed the threshold of human adaptability by the end of the century. And while many put their hopes in the COP21 summit in Paris, it may be too little and too late to prevent the catastrophe.
A lot of people are talking about the two popes.
Yes.
Pope Francis is now.
I just want to say the tale of two popes.
Pope Francis is now doing a tour of Africa. He was in Kenya recently and had a mass there. But we have an item here, a headline here, that Egypt's Coptic Pope is visiting Jerusalem. Pope Tawadros II arrived in Jerusalem yesterday for a funeral of a senior cleric, the funeral of Archbishop Anba Abraham, who was the head of the Coptic Church here in the Holy Land, and he died at the age of 72.
And the Coptic Pope, clearly not as famous as Francis, but we're going to give him his due respect.
Yes.
Okay.
North and South Korea are holding very rare talks again. This is the first time they're having talks since that interaction they had in August, where they almost basically started a war. Right. I don't know if you remember this. It started with...
Doesn't that happen quite often? Yeah, I know.
Well, two South Korean soldiers were injured in a landmine. That was happening in August. And then the South Koreans started blasting over their loudspeakers over the border this South Korean propaganda, and that started some altercations there right over the border. And since then, things have kind of settled down, but these are rare talks that are happening now in the north, right on the border in the village of Panmunjom, if I pronounced that correctly.
What language are they speaking? South Korean or
North Korean? I don't know. It's a good action. It's a good question.
And that's why we lock them here in the studio. Yes. And
my favorite story: VW scam, the emissions scam. Now Audi, which is its luxury flagship, suspends 2 engineers in an emissions probe. I find this to be totally ridiculous.
I mean, just rid of my Porsche.
And I'm getting rid of my Audi.
Wow. But you knew it. You said that when the Volkswagen saga came out.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to me, the whole story is about the lawsuits and the class action lawsuits that are now starting to pile up in the States, in Australia. There's going to be a big one in Germany now as well, in the hometown, the home country.
But it's all connected with your first story regarding CO2 emissions and climate change.
VW is to blame for the whole
Exactly.
And Audi. And Audi.
And
Russia, I don't know if you remember the whole doping scandal that we talked about recently.
Yes.
They have accepted in full the indefinite ban from World Athletics over the doping scandal. They've accepted it. They will not compete in international competitions. They are still hoping, though, that they will be allowed to compete in the upcoming Olympics in Rio in 2016.
Okay.
But they have accepted in full this ban from international competition, and they promise to cooperate.
Okay.
He has covered the world from Pope to dope.
From Pope to dope.
Wow.
And
Oh my God. New York Times is slamming Donald Trump.
we don't have to listen, but tell me the story. Yes.
Well, he was mocking a New York Times reporter actually on stage, making this is a reporter named Serge Kovaleski who has
a
what is called an
disability.
arthrogeropsis, a congenital condition. It affects joint movement and kind of makes arms look a bit. So Trump was actually on stage and mimicking this reporter who was apparently alleging stuff about what he said about 9/11 and thousands of people in New Jersey cheering.
We're going to take a look at it as when we return, because it's a moment that cannot be lost and missed. Stay with